Hi guys, Spartan765 here today. Today I'm just doing a video, on something, that I really haven't seen a whole lot of on YouTube. And it's not a gun review or anything like that. It's just, going over, my basic opinions and what I've seen in different gun stores as far as their security goes. And when I say security, I don't mean like their, actual entry systems or their front doors. I mean how their guns are, secured or, stored, like if they have handguns behind the counter or cabled, rifles cabled to the wall, stuff like that. Now, I'm going to go over some of the extremes here that I've seen. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, that, all guns need to be, heavily cabled and all that. I'm not, but, I'm also not saying, that you should have, just handguns laying out on the open for anybody to grab. But I'm going to go over the extremes that I've seen today, both on the ridiculous end of, ridiculous end of security, as far as how certain gun shops or big box stores will store their firearm or have their firearms on the rack or on display. And I'll also go over some security measures that I've seen in certain gun stores, which I'm not going to name, that are ridiculously horrible, very dangerous. Alright, first off, I'm going to start off by saying, like I said, I'm the type of person who overall, in my opinion, believes that, hey, yes, if a gun is on a shelf, just sitting on the shelf there, it should, if it's out of view of the register, should be cabled and should at least be cabled to the, the wall. I'm not saying, that's necessary. I mean, if you have a small gun shop, no guns need to be cabled, and guns don't need to have trigger locks on them. That's just completely ridiculous. If you own a small gun shop, like, I don't know, like the size of maybe a small gas station, there's no need for guns to be cabled and trigger locked to the wall. Alright. Now, if this is a bigger box store, like a Gander Mountain, a Cabela's, or Bass Pro Shop, what have you, the guns on the floor there, because that's obviously a much bigger area. Those guns, yeah, they can be, I'm fine with those guns, being maybe cabled to the thing, you know what I mean? But I'm going to go over first off the extreme that I think is just completely ridiculous as far as security goes and how they hold guns. And I'm not talking about, keeping them, some places like Dick's Sporting Goods will obviously have the rifles behind the counter and stuff like that. I'm just talking about gun shops that, will have the guns out for you to look at. As far as, this doesn't really apply to handguns, because most shops, in fact, I'm pretty sure the law requires handguns to be held in the case behind the counter. So I'm just covering long guns here. You ever go to a Cabela's? Okay, now, you go shopping for a Mosin Nagant or whatever, okay? So what's the first thing you do when you want to buy a Mosin Nagant? First thing you want to do, right, is obviously, look at the receiver, look at the date. Then the second thing you want to do is you want to look down the barrel. Make sure that barrel is in the sewer pipe. Alright, Cabela's, they're a big box store, so I understand this. They cable and they trigger, their trigger locks are cabled to the gun rack. Perfectly fine. That way, so someone can't just slip one under their coat and walk out with it. But here's where the ridiculous part comes. It's just completely asinine and over the top. They zip tie shut all of the bolts on all of the rifles in the store. So you can go over to a pump-action shotgun and work the action in the pump-action shotgun, but you can't operate the bolt on a bolt-action rifle for some reason. Okay, now keep in mind, on this same gun rack, there'll be like a Ruger Mini 14, and the bolt, you can't obviously tie the bolt on that, so the bolt's just open. Okay, no one is going to be able to take a round and put it in a gun and fire the gun with a trigger lock on it. And that's, what I think one of their big concerns is they're worried about somebody coming in or taking ammo and putting it in a gun, which is a real concern. And there are crazy people out there. But if you have a trigger lock on, if you cannot look at all, if you're a store employee and you cannot visualize all the guns at the same time, or you can't see, or you have multiple people that can't see, yeah, trigger lock and cable is perfectly fine. But when you have the bolt zip tied shut so that customers cannot look down the barrel to see if the bore's good or not, come on. If you have to go from a customer standpoint, someone like me who, buys and sells I'll buy a Mosin Nagant, keep it. I might find one that's a little bit more rare. I'll take my other one, sell it back to the gun store. Or I'll buy like 3 or 4 of them and keep. I have like 4 or 5 of them right now. But I'm the person who will buy, a decent number of surplus rifles. Just because I collect stuff like that. But anyway, so I walked up to ask one of the store clerks. I says, hey, I'm looking at one of your Mosin Nagants here. As a lot of you probably know by now, since Mosin Nagants are becoming more scarce, they started shipping the crappy ones over there all counterboard. No hex receivers. But when you find one that isn't, like, hey, would I be able to take a look at that down the bore of that Mosin Nagant? I'm thinking of maybe buying it. He goes, are you going to buy it? I said, possibly, if the barrel's good on it. If the barrel's not... sorry about that, was my phone. I said, if the barrel's not good on it, I'm not going to buy it. Well, I can't just, cut the zip tie off the bolt unless you're going to buy it. I'm like, I'm not going to buy a rifle without looking down the bore first to see if it's pitted. He's like, I'm sorry, I can't do anything about it. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. Anyway, I don't know if that was just if that was just one store employee, or if that was their policy as far as not cutting the zip tie off to let a customer see the barrel. Not going to judge Cabela's on that fact, because it could have just been the employee was lazy and didn't want to do it, which is the case at a lot of gun stores. Now, like I said, that's the extreme end of firearm security, as far as where the guns are still out where the customer can look at them, or pick them up. And the bolts are closed, or zip-tied shut, but yet the semi-automatics are not zip-tied shut, because they can't really zip-tie shut. Some of them they can, like the SKSs are zip-tied shut, they do it around the sight block, but your AR-15s and stuff aren't. Okay, now I'm gonna switch sides here. I'm gonna go to the stupidest shit I've seen that makes a very unsafe condition in a gun shop. Alright. Now there's a gun shop in my area where I was in there the other day just browsing around, looking for some ammo and some mags. And I walk in the gun store, and on the shelf there's like a shelf that's maybe like this high, that where the gun sits here on here, and then below this is ammo shelves. Alright. Here comes the part that a lot of you are probably going to be like, what the fuck? And my buddy was with me too, and he's like, he noticed it too. But they had an M1 Grand on the rack here. And there wasn't any, this gun shop doesn't have any trigger locks on it, any trigger locks or cables. This is a smaller gun shop, so the employees can see everything that's usually going on, for the most part. But this M1 Grand is kind of in the back area where they might not be able to see everything if they're not looking. And right below the M1 Grand, one shelf below, was loaded 8-round iron block stripper clips sitting there for sale for like $5.99 a piece. So you had M1 Grand, and then right below it, right below the shelf, are loaded iron block 8-round iron block clips. You know what an iron block, if you pull the bolt back, you push the iron block in, and you're good to go. Yeah, they had the gun with no trigger lock on it, or anything like that, and then they had the ammo in the iron block ready to go right below the rifle. They were probably about 6 to 7 inches apart. Now, that is so fucking stupid. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be riding the safety train here. Well, I mean, I'm a very safe person when it comes to firearms, but, I'm not saying, that should be, that shouldn't be, or that, I'm not saying that should be like that. I'm saying that, that is really stupid, because you could have some thug that could come in this gun shop and see that, and maybe most thugs probably don't know much about guns, but someone who had a clue that maybe wasn't all there, or whatever, or like just a kid who maybe some 15-year-old kid that saw a movie, and saw the ammo there, just pull the bolt back, put the iron block in. And on this other on the shelves next to it, there was some 8mm Mausers, some Swedish Mausers, some stuff like that. Right below those Mausers, again, was stripper clips with ammo loaded on it, right below the gun. Now, I just think that is just not very safe. Obviously. As far as, like I said, what I think, Like I said, I'm a very gun-safe person. Safety is number one. But I mean, it can be taken to an extent that's ridiculous. Like I said, at Cabela's, when I was in there, they had the bolts zip-tied shut in a gun that was already trigger-locked and cabled to the gun rack. That's ridiculous. And having a gun that's not trigger-locked is perfectly fine in a small gun shop. It's not cabled, it's perfectly fine in a small gun shop. But when the ammo is stored right underneath it and in the iron block clip ready to go, that's a little concerning. Okay. I don't know, that's just my personal thoughts on it. But this is just a general video on, gun shop safety and what their security procedures are. And there are other gun shops I've been in where, they'll have the guns cabled, smaller gun shops that are, generally more busy or might be more in towards the city. And they'll have some of the guns cabled, some of the guns won't be cabled, but their employees will keep really good eyes on the customers. And in this gun shop where I go to another gun shop where none of the guns are cabled, they're just trigger locked, and all of the ammunition is kept behind the counter no matter what caliber it is. But then again, that's fine. I do agree it is a little irritating when you go into a gun store and they have all of the ammo behind the counter and you can't really, look for what you want to buy. You can just see a small assortment. But yeah, basically I guess it goes based upon how the gun store is laid out. I mean, if the gun store is laid out, very well where the employees can see, yeah, you don't need trigger lock, you don't need your guns to be cabled to the wall or whatever else. But bigger box store, like I said, yeah, it's perfectly fine to be cabled and trigger locked, because you can't have an employee be watching that constantly all the time. But yeah, that's just my video on that. Comments, questions, video requests, send me a message. Party 765 out.